morning and welcome to Mkabizi, your to-go-to show for matters economy as well as social economics. And today we dive deep into one of the biggest conversations making headlines across the country, that is the petroleum sector. Remember, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, recently revised the energy prices, the cost of fuel, which saw petrol shoot by 9 shillings following the review. We'll also unpack what's behind this with an expert in studio. Plus, we'll look into the Kenya Roads Board, 175 billion shillings loan through securitization of the road maintenance levy, a move that has been stirring public concern, as well as we have seen recently. We saw leaders, including the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, John Mbadi, mentioning that any leader mentioning that securitization of this particular initiative is a good move. Cabinet Secretary says it's a good move, whereas a section of members of Parliament, including Kiharu, Member of Parliament, Ndindi Nyoro, saying that this is not the way to go. But well, we have a question of the day, and we ask you, do you think the recent fuel price hike is justified given the current economic hardships? The question of the day is, do you think the recent fuel price hike is justified given the current economic hardships in the country? Continue to engage with us in all our social media platform at K24 TV on X, as well as K24 TV in all our social media platforms. Remember, today in studio we have an expert, Beatrice Ndongo, who is from KPMG. She's a tax manager. Many thanks for joining us here today, Beatrice. Before we really engage into this conversation, I don't know whether, Kasavuli, you have that bite by Ndindi Nyoro we can listen into?
What is the urgency for? And in their responses, I saw they are trying to justify construction of roads. Construction of roads in Kenya is not an invention that has been done yesterday.
There is effect of some of these decisions that we have taken. And anyone taking us away is distracting us.
It was very disappointing to see the Minister for the National Treasury trying diversionary tactics. Even if you want to do some financial engineering, it is important for us to do it within the PFM Act. And it is also important for us, as we make decisions, not to overburden Kenyans just for us to get the political utility today.
The intention of some people is to distract the government, and some of us, like myself, would not allow to be distracted.
Well, Ndindi Nyoro says this is financial engineering. Beatrice, I wonder what are your thoughts around this?
Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. And I think we have seen an interesting 2-3 days in the issue of fuel. The hike in this cycle has been quite high compared to what has been in the past year even. And then the speech from Honorable Ndindi Nyoro and the subsequent comments from the CS. One of the things that is a reality of our economy right now is the government needs money. The government does not have as much leeway as it had in the past. The Kenya Revenue Authority has been struggling with targets. I'm not sure they even met the target for the year that just ended. So the government is trying to come up with innovative ways to raise taxes and keep taxpayers happy, to raise taxes, raise revenue and keep taxpayers happy. Last year was one of the hardest years, I would say, for the government, with the Finance Act having to be put aside and the revenue that the government sought to raise from that particular bill not being realized. So the government then has to come up with a way of raising revenue and manage the feel of the citizens so that they are not very annoyed. We don't see riots. So this is a creative way of government raising funds.
It's attacked.
Yeah.
But well, before we'll come back to securitization, the conversation around it, what this really means and whether it's the way to go for this particular government. But then let's look at the recent price hikes for fuel, the new revision by EPRA. They attributed this to so many factors, including the high cost of landing cost and cargo as well. But from your own perspective, what would you link this to? Because EPRA DG really dismissed the fact that Kenyans are saying it's because of this securitization.
So one of the aspects that is there is some aspect of the landing cost increasing, but then one of the things that is not flexible is our taxation on fuel. You'll realize where the taxes and levies on fuel form 101% of the landing cost as at in this cycle especially. That is significantly high. That is very, very high. Then put in the margins by the distributors, the distribution cost, but the taxes really form 101% of the cost. That is very high. And a question that someone will ask themselves is, we are getting fuel from the same places with the other neighboring countries like Tanzania, like Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia. However, our prices are significantly higher, including for higher than Uganda, and their fuel will use our port. So in as much as there might be some aspect of global market play and the issue at in the Middle East, there is also a critical issue that our tax on fuel is tax and levies, they are very high on fuel.
So whatever they attributed this to is not quite really justified.
It's not really fully justified, because then we should have seen an increase across board. In Uganda, we should have seen a significant, as much a jump. Or you'll find in Tanzania, the fuel in Kenya is more than 40 shillings, Kenya shillings, or even 50 shillings, Kenya shillings, more expensive in Kenya. And what gradually and the high taxes on fuel mean is that even where in the past the market prices have gone down, Kenyans have not been able to feel that, because then the taxes are there, and at some of those points, is when the government will raise taxes. So you will not realize, but in the subsequent periods or in the subsequent months, when the fuel, the global markets then go up, there is no caution. There is no caution for taxpayers to caution them from the immediate hit of the price increase. And
even as you're talking about the immediate hit and shocks, paint a picture to us in regards to the impact of these oil prices versus domestic policies on Kenya's fuel pricing.
Come again, sorry.
So when we talk about, when we link this to the global crisis in the Middle East, the Iraq and Israel war, how significant is the impact of global prices versus the policies that we have locally?
Okay, so the global market could play a part. Of course, it plays a part on the fuel price here. That being that Kenya, we don't produce fuel, so all our fuel we are going to be importing it. So of course, the global market influences the prices now at the pump. But there is also a big aspect that is dependent on the policy around fuel in Kenya, and that is, and really you can tell from the fact that every 14th we wake up with a new with a new price. We know there is going to be a new price. That points to the fact that there is some domestic policy and intervention at play. And while this is a good thing, when there are so many taxes on this, so many taxes on this, and quite a lot of
inefficiencies
in that, it means that any benefits at the global market are not realized here. And then also, because my thinking is that the idea of these policies should be to protect, and the idea behind EPRA is to protect the consumers, and this is the taxpayers and the citizens from fuel shocks. But if the policies in place do not allow for a slight, for cautioning citizens from a slight from a slight hike at the global market, then the policy at play, the policies at play are inefficient.
But I'm just curious, Beatrice, when you say the government should really, or EPRA should find ways to like cushion Kenyans in regards to what's happening globally. But then what are the options now? Because we just moved from subsidy. Should we go back there? What are the repercussions? What is the gap in between?
So going back to the subsidy, that is a whole other long story. But one of the things that we should consider is look at our taxation. At these levies, there are so many things that there's so many taxes being levied on fuel. 101% is crazy. Think about it. When you pay for a liter, when a liter of fuel comes in, 101% of the landing cost. If you even to look at it from the angle of when you go and pay 186 shillings today per liter, about 49%, 50% goes to taxes. So there lies the problem. There lies the problem. There should be a way of reducing these taxes to at least even match with our neighboring countries like Tanzania. Probably you need to see what are they doing differently. And when you look at it, the issue, what Tanzania and Rwanda are doing differently is that the taxes around their fuel. That is the best policy point to be able to influence the final price at the pump. Yes.
And even when we are talking about these levies, the fuel levy currently stands at 25 shillings per litre. And then it includes an original cost of 18 shillings dedicated for road maintenance. And now this is an additional 7 shillings introduced by this administration. What then, where do you see this particular sector when you have all these levies? Is there a view that these might even go up, or what are the attributions to another additional 7 shillings from the 25?
From the 25. You see, how the CS was explaining it and how the government really has explained it is that there were some bills that needed to be paid, and there was also issue of maintenance on the roads and development of new roads. One of the things that we are currently as a country struggling with is a big portion of the money that the country or the government is receiving is going towards recurrent expenditure. So there is very little left for development. And from the past years, development and construction is what has promoted economic growth. So one of the fears that the government could probably be trying to address is that there needs to be some form of development and construction to fuel economic growth. However, looking at increasing a very critical aspect of, and fuel is a critical aspect. And probably in the last few years, Kenyans are very, very sensitive on taxes. So the government is having a difficult time because even an increase of 1 shilling brings issues. This 7 shillings increase in the fuel levy and the many other things, there is need to look at them because also there are so many different levies being handled by so many different government agencies. Probably that is one of the places we need to look at and see, can these levies be collapsed into one under one agency? That would probably improve efficiency in that particular sector and also ensure that then the administrative cost of managing these levies and the many agencies reduces.
But do you think EPRA truly is independent in its pricing decisions? Because we are seeing so many concerns raised both from Kenyans, leaders, even in the same administration. Do you think EPRA is independent when they're doing their pricing?
Of course, EPRA might not be very independent. The independence to a certain extent, they will be relying, the government has some influence on them or on the pricing. And one of the ways that you can evidently see this is in instances where there have been significant decreases at the global market. This has not been felt, because if it was independent and the government was not trying to manage the revenue that the government is getting from fuel, then those decreases should have come out and should have been felt. But that is not the case. You realize when the fuel has reduced maybe 5 shillings, and that one has been a very small percentage of the actual decreases of the global
and you know
market.
And you know, the Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi for Treasury mentioned that this is the cheapest loan ever acquired in the country, with an interest of about 7%, 7.5%. But then, do you think this is an effective financial strategy?
So when you look at the interest rate, 7.5 for sure is quite cheap, given that the commercial banks are giving loans at 16%, upwards of 16, 18. So 7.5 is really cheap. But then the question that you want to look at it from many angles, not only from the angle of it being cheap. The first thing is, of course, in the government, in the budget this year, the government is planning to borrow 550 billion Kenya shillings from the domestic market. So when the government takes loans from the commercial banks, the commercial banks are definitely going to prioritize the government, because the government is less risky compared to private private companies or private individuals. In that case, the government is already where private businesses would be getting credit, the government is going to the same market. So that has an impact on the availability of loans to private businesses and to individuals in the market. That is one angle of looking at it. Then looking at this issue of taking a loan against future taxes. That means there is no flexibility in the next couple of years for this tax to reduce, because then if you reduce this particular tax, you will not have
achieved, you will not even collect, and they're expecting 100 billion, and Ndindi Nyoro mentioned that the government will have to pay an extra 100 billion shillings, and they just borrowed 175 billion shillings. Is that really 7.5% interest when you look at it from that perspective?
When you look at it and then at the figures and the numbers being thrown around, one of the things that you might not be able to comment on is the accuracy of who is saying the right thing really. Until this now becomes to the public domain properly, that is when we might be able to really comment on that. That is when we might be able to comment on that. And then the other thing to look at it, this is 7.5. This is a Kenya shilling denominated loan, as they say. It could be cheap, but you look at it in the long run and the other implications around it, then the actual cost stops being the 7.5 and is higher, and probably should really be looked into.
Wow, many questions are being raised around that. But now, even before we talk about the costs, the implications of the price hike to the cost of living, Ndindi Nyoro was questioning the legality and transparency of this particular securitization deal, and I would like to pick your thoughts in regards to this. Do you believe these concerns are valid from the policy and legal point of view? Because let's take a look at, was the government transparent when they mentioned, if they mentioned the collateral? We have not seen what's the collateral for this.
So when it comes to looking at it from two angles, one, legality, and the other, the transparency. On the legality, you wouldn't say it is per se illegal, because the government is allowed to go out and get loans and get loans both internally and externally. So in the legality, it's not per se illegal for them to do that. The issue that then becomes is on the transparency of the whole issue, because you realize if Honorable Ndindi Nyoro did not make as much noise as he made about this thing, probably we would have taken a long time to ever know that such a thing has come into being. And given that this is a very critical issue, it's affecting Kenyans today, it's affecting 10 years to come. It has a very big impact on even the future of the country. It's something that there should have been a bit more transparency. The government might have been a little bit more forthcoming on the information. Say, did this, and one of the issues that that Ndindi Nyoro was raising is that did this money, the 175 billion that was taken up, or did it pass through the exchequer? So those are now some of the things that probably where the transparency might not have been as we would have hoped.
And this looks like it's a controversy that's reveal about Kenya's public management of funds and levies. But then let's look at it from an angle of what are the effects to the common mwananchi in regards to the price hikes and whatever is happening in the petroleum sector.
So fuel is a very critical aspect of any economy, and when you look at the inflation rates that were read out during the budget cycle, the budget in June, the lower inflation rate was attributed actually in his speech to the stable prices of fuel, and because then fuel drives food prices, it drives many other things within the economy. So fuel is very, very important. It drives the cost of food. It drives the cost of the shoe you're wearing, because the supplier, when they get it, how they transport it, how they get it processed. Some manufacturing companies in Kenya are heavily reliant on fuel, so it has an impact on the price of every other thing. So maybe in the immediate we'll see fuel, we'll see transport hikes. For the common mwananchi, we are likely to see that from matatus to these other taxis like Ubers, like the Bolt and the like. So we are likely to see the increase in that. Then the other thing that then will happen is the chain. It's a chain cycle. It's a chain reaction. So the price for me getting my goods increases, the food will start increasing, the prices of food will start increasing, because then where a farmer was transporting their goods from, let's say, Nyeri to Nairobi at argument 6,000, probably now the transporter is going to charge them 7,000. So that means this farmer must, and the person who is selling these things at the market within Nairobi or within any other place has to now consider that increase in price. So there is definitely going to be an impact on the price of basic commodities. And then when this increase, when the cost that I'm paying to get things increases, then it affects my many other things. Then one, it will reduce my disposable income. It also reduces my spending on social things, the black tax. The impact is felt by everyone.
Wow, that's a lot for a common mwananchi, and I'm just curious about what will be happening to the common mwananchi. For how long will this be? And if for sure the taxation in this particular levy, the levy is collected from this particular sector, will ultimately trickle down to the common mwananchi, where we'll get good services, good roads, because I mean it's road levy. The contractors have been paid. We need to stop to check and see whether those roads have actually been constructed. But well, when we come back, we are going to talk about the contribution of the petroleum sector into the country's economy. But first, let's take a short commercial break. Keep it here at Amka Biz.